Listen up. We're sharing a great entrepreneurial story, right? We're talking with an entrepreneur about their journey, about the surprising way that they got to where they are. And the reason that's cool for you is because we all have a story like that. And when you hear other people's stories, you tap into something and you're reminded of something about your story that's powerful and useful and that would be good to lean into, to embrace, that kind of thing. So that's our show for today. Okay, we're done. No, we're going to get into this great, surprising, rich, fun story, and I think it'll help you with your journey. Hey, everybody, Bill Gallagher, scaling coach and host of the Scaling Up Business Podcast. Our show comes to you weekly, and we have got more than 600 shows now. And then we do workshops and we have coaching programs and all kinds of things like that. So, and, you know, in particular this year, we're leaning into more ways to speed and ease your scaling process using the latest AI tools. So all of the cool kinds of prompts and tips and techniques and tools and which ones to go and where they make the biggest advantage. And, you know, what not to bother with? Like, where's the snake oil that's being sold around all this thing? The false promise from the carpetbaggers that are out there pimping their AI hacks and tricks. We're going to tell you some real practical things in our workshops this year. All right. So listen, now I'm joined by Jeff Gargas, who's already on screen if you're watching us live. And so Jeff is the COO and co-founder of a company called teachbetter.com. They work with educational districts across the United States, particularly in the Midwest, but all over the U.S., helping them to do a better job teaching and to upgrade their lessons and curriculums and methods and things like that. And here's the thing. Jeff's a 4-time college dropout. He'll tell you more about that kind of thing. He's got a background in music and music promotion, music making, bands and things like that. What does a guy like this know about education? Wow, where does he get the nerve to do what he does? Where do you get the nerve to do what you do? I think most of the entrepreneurs that I've met and spoken to over the years really they got into something that they never should have gotten into. They bucked the trend. They did something new and different, and that is a cool thing. There's something underlying there, an education that we have that we bring to bear, but it's not the traditional one, and that's where the innovation, the value come from. So listen in. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Bill, thanks for having me, man. That was an awesome intro. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Can you believe what an amazing story you're about to tell?
I sometimes I don't. So it's really nice when someone calls it amazing and looks at it as a good thing. So I appreciate that a whole lot. And by the way, 600 plus episodes, that's nothing to be shy about. That's insane, man. That's awesome. So congrats to you and your team. Like, this is a heck of a show, and 600 is not easy to do.
You know, if you just keep at it and you don't quit or die, you get somewhere in the end.
Yeah. It's great. Well, when the majority of podcasts don't make it past, I think it's like 7 or 8 episodes. It's crazy to think that you guys are still going. So it's awesome. You provide a lot of value. So it's really cool to be here.
Well, I don't play any music myself, but I have always joked that I play the stereo really well. And I found myself late one night as an accidental DJ, and that continued on for some time and affects my work to this day. But you played in bands, and what instruments did you play? What kind of music? Tell us about your music background before we get into the business.
Sure. Yeah. So I played in bands in and out for a little bit. I was lead singer and played guitar, typically like a rhythm guitar, and bounced around a little bit, and finally got with one band that I stuck with for the longest. We were together for about 5 years, and just played locally, a little bit regionally, nothing crazy. We performed for a few hundred usually locally and did okay there and stuff. And as we got closer to like the college age, we were trying to figure out what we were doing, and we ended up breaking up, and it was like right after I started the record label as well, and kind of came from that. But
so high school, college years?
Yeah, so it was me. I was actually the old guy in the band. I was 4 years older than the other guys. It was in my senior year into my first year out of high school, and then like the last couple of years of their high school, and then into college and stuff. So it was a weird point because guys in the band younger, it was hard to get into bars and play for the first few years. So we actually had to put on our own shows. So we'd rent out like Knights of Columbus halls and stuff like that, and find our own place to play, which kind of led into the whole record label and promotion side of things because we were kind of doing it anyway.
Jam and garages. So what kind of music were you putting out?
We played the way I've always tried. I sort of described it. And hopefully, this will make sense to you. Is like think like Incubus meets Matchbox 20. I don't know if that makes sense. So I wrote these simple little, typically love songs, and then the three guys in my band who were way far more talented musicians and had crazy eclectic backgrounds kind of brought in their own influence and it became something way different than what I created. And so a lot of stuff come in heavily influenced by Dave Matthews, Nirvana, the Beatles, Simon and Garfunkel, and a whole bunch of bands I don't even know to this day because they were so out there that my drummer used to listen to, and we made them into our own little weird. I don't know. It was probably would fall into the alternative rock genre of the early 2000s, I think, with a little bit of pop in there for sure. I think definitely that was me. I think.
Yeah.
So it's been a while.
Some famous writer said there's nothing new under the sun, right? And I think and then some friends of ours said everything's a remix, and I love that as a more modern interpretation of that same idea. Like, the things that we do that feel fresh, that feel new, they're just some familiar stuff combined in a new way. And really,
right. It's really hard to when someone says it's all original, we don't fit anywhere. I'm like, you probably fit somewhere. You just don't know how to hear yourself and where that is. But yeah, you're right. I like that too. Like everything's a remix. It's just with your little twist to it, hopefully, right? Hopefully with your personality and your art and your passions thrown in there a little bit. And that's what makes it yours versus whatever it was originally. So.
And then you just need the clearances, and to pay the money for your samples.
If you take samples, make sure you're doing that. Yeah, we never did that, so we never got to explore that world all that much. But with the record label, I had a little bit of that, but I prefer to stay away from that. So
I have a funny question you're not prepared for, but
sure.
What is the kookiest story that you could think of that comes to mind about your whole sort of from performing to promoting? What's the weirdest music industry, music business story you have for us?
Like coolest or weirdest?
I don't know. You decide.
So I have two I could go to. I think the coolest was when the first time I ever got recognized, is I was on a first date, which was really cool. And a little kid recognized me. That's whatever. The one of the strangest one was we promoted all these shows. We did a battle of the bands once, and a guy was trying to attack me afterwards with a knife because his band didn't win, and for some reason blamed me, even though I had nothing to do with the vote. And I just happened.
Yeah,
it wasn't even my band. It was when I had my record label and we put it on, and it was judges, a panel, it was voted by people. His band had no one there, and they had to escort him out, and the whole way out he was just cursing me out, yelling at me, and I'm like, what did I do? I'm just trying to help music here. And it was that was one of the weirdest, I think, experiences. But I also you kind of wake up to a little bit of okay, well, when you do this types of event, you run the risk of you're the one who hosted it. It's your fault if it doesn't go the way. And man, musicians are passionate. That's for sure. We found out later that he had been in jail and it went back to jail for assaults with weapons. So that was kind of scary, but that was probably the weirdest, I think, because it was just a strange, never saw that coming kind of a thing. But
he'd been in jail. There were restraining orders against him. He was presently armed and under the influence.
Yeah. I mean, I thought, the worst part about it, Bill, I liked their music. I liked their band. I thought they were I enjoyed their music. Just that I don't think anybody else did. That was the problem. What are you going to do?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. People ask me, what's your favorite kind of music? I'm like, I could think of songs I like from many different genres. But they're not right for every moment, right? There's times that I am in the mood for something slow, times that I want something sexy, times that I need to get the energy up, times that I need to shout. There's a different vibe. It's different vibes for different times.
Well, I think that's what's great about music, though, right? Because if you're open to it, you can find a song for any feeling you're having, to whether you need to wallow in that feeling, or if you need to, you said, get it out. There's something you can listen to. That's how I've always looked at it. So
I remember when somebody on my team was going through a breakup once, and they came in the office, and we always had music in my offices, and even to this day, and there's music, and they were like, yeah, no love songs. We just kill the love songs. So I'm like, okay, wait, let's throw together a playlist of no love songs, and just everything is Prodigy and
Prodigy. Nice.
Lots of anger.
A lot of Slipknot in there.
Darkness.
Yeah.
So, what do you think now is what are the takeaways or the main thing that you bring from music to the business of education?
It's interesting. I think similar. So similar to what we were just kind of talking about of well, you kind of alluded to like sort of, and hopefully our conversation here will inspire someone listening and going, oh, I have a unique story that doesn't make sense. And I got to find the thing from my past that makes me right for what I'm trying to do. And I think about the music and how there's a different song for everything. Our taste in music can go so one end to the other end and we fight about it and there's legions. And when we look at like educators and the art form that they have in their classrooms or in their building with their leadership, there's no one size fits all. There's no one right thing that works for all of them. No students are the same. No group of students is the same. No community is the same. No teacher is the same, even if they're side by side in the hallway. And Chad also being a musician, Chad's my co-founder, also being a musician. He was the teacher. That's always been really important to us to understand that, like, while we have things and a framework that we believe worked and different systems and ideas that we know work and we have data to support them, they only work when we allow the teachers to bring their unique style and their unique passions into it and infuse it with it. Because again, not every teacher's the same. And so I think it's very similar. It's interesting that we kind of started with the music side of stuff because no one's ever taken me that way because it's the same type of thing, right? You can't force a musician who's passionate about their art to go this way or that way. You're not going to get that feeling. It's the same way in a classroom. You can't force a passionate teacher to go this way or that way. You have to support them and guide them and give them the tools so they can then find the way to use it. And, Teach Better actually comes from one of the things when our company started from something that we now call the grid method, which is a framework for utilizing mastery learning. It's like the thing that started it all. And Chad from day one said, I never want to go into a classroom and tell a teacher how to teach. They don't need me to do that. I just want to say, hey, this helped me teach better. Maybe it'll help you. And that's what we've tried to do. And it's like, hey, and our framework's very flexible. It's not rigid. That's why we never created curriculum. We don't want to create curriculum or books or anything. We create a framework of best practices that allow them to piece together things that data supports and shows work so that they can then put their own little spin on it because they're already a good teacher. We're just hoping to make them a little bit better if we can. And so it's very similar to the way that music style is different and art and performances are all different, but the right one makes sense for the right person.
So this will go in like all sorts of weird ways, I think, but it'll be interesting. So and perhaps valuable in some unexpected ways for our audience. But it'll be up to the guys to pick up what to do later. So I remember being about 10 years old and getting in trouble for not paying attention in class. And I went home and I talked to my dad. My parents were both educators for most of my life. My dad was also an entrepreneur and author, but educators in one sense or another, and PhDs and masters and things like that. So I go home and I complain. My dad's like, "Why'd you get in trouble?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I wasn't paying attention. The teacher's stupid, and the class is boring, and the textbooks are stupid, and the worksheets are idiotic, and I wouldn't have used the words, but I'm like all the conversations, the interactions are insipid and pedantic, and I want no part of any of this crap." Like, right? Except I would have used 10-year-old words.
So I say great words as a 10-year-old. What a vocabulary! That's great. That's
so he's like, "Well, why don't you offer to teach a class?" Right. And he's like calling my bluff or teaching me, or I have no idea. Right. And to this day, I'm surprised that I do the work that I do. Because I never would have predicted it and I never thought of it. But now I look back. So I'm like, oh, great. So I go in and I tell my teacher, hey, look, I'm sorry, whenever I got in trouble. I love to teach a class.
nice.
And teacher's like, all right, let's see what you got. Like, prepare your lesson plan or whatever. So I'm like, okay, we have this subject. I don't even remember what it was now. And what do kids like? Kids like comic books. So I'm like, I am going to use a comic book to teach this subject, something from this. And so I prepare this lesson plan and I go and I tell the story and I show the comic book and we talk about it. And I don't know, I don't remember, did I have copies of it or whatever exactly? But that was the basic structure. And the kids were just entertained that somebody was up there doing it different, So I like of the class and I got the thing, and a little seed must have been planted. Right. And now I think about today, like as a CEO, as an entrepreneur, and now as a coach, I'm teaching, training. But before that, I was teaching my teams. I was evangelizing. I was teaching the marketplace, investors, customers. Right. So, and I think like so much of it is lost right in the opening. What we take for granted, the attention or whatever. So the hook, the open, like grab them with something is the first thing I think about, like get engaged. So a little kid stepping on the front of the room with a comic book is a surprising thing, right? There, thing that surprises and grabs the attention. I walked to the stage at a memorable big talk once, and I dropped a story on people. People were not expecting that story. It was riveting and powerful and heartbreaking, and they're like, "Oh, this is not a normal business talk," right? So then there's the inquiry, then there's the mapping it back, and then there's the actual like grappling with it. So first the thinking, and then the worksheet or exercise, that kind of thing, and kind of in that sequence. And I think about that today. So is that right on, or would you do it differently with your folks?
No, and I think that it's you're spot on. It's the hook, right? And that's one thing. I mean, that's a big part of like the progressive movement in education is like, hey, like it is your responsibility to entertain them, and with the intent of capturing their interest so that you can then present them with the information that we're supposed to get them. Because if we can't capture them, then they're not even getting a fair chance to even try to understand the material because you lost them. So how do we capture them? And again, that's different for every person, but how do you capture them so that then they can actually, even have a prayer of paying attention to all the stuff that you're going to ask them to connect with. And that's a big part of our thing. One of the big things that we do in a shift from teachers is shifting from this idea that a teacher is still someone who stands at the front of the room and delivers information. One of the things that we always say, I'm grabbing my phone here, is that if you're a teacher and you think your job's to deliver information, you've been replaced by this guy because it can do it a whole lot faster. Right.
Yeah.
And with all types of sources. Right. And so it's no longer your job to stand up there and deliver information. It's your job to facilitate learning, which is the very first part of facilitating learning, is get the learners to want to actually learn something. Right. And if you can't, to your point, the hook, if you can't get them on the hook, if you can't get them to engage with you right away, it doesn't matter. You can say all the stuff you want to say, and you can check off the box that you covered it, but they're not going to do well on test, and they're certainly not going to understand it for the rest of for whatever they need it for, for the future. And so, 100% agree. And one of the things that we do is do a lot of challenging. That's a lot of shifting of the mindset, of shifting the ownership of the education back to the students, allowing them to move at their own pace and allowing them to really engage with materials instead of just sit in rows, listen to me talk for 40 minutes and then move on, because that just doesn't work. One, it's not an effective way to teach someone, but also the students, to your point, they're bored, they're annoyed. And it was funny that you talk about you getting in trouble, is what we've also found is that the majority of kids who get in trouble are kids that are either bored because they already get it, or they don't see how it's important, or are so far behind because they didn't understand the concept that they needed in order to start, that they're frustrated. It's very rarely that they're just bad kids. Like there's usually, now there's a lot of other reasons too, potentially emotional things, whatever, but a lot of kids we see that are actually getting in trouble are actually incredibly bright kids who are just bored. And they get into your point of like, this worksheet's stupid. Why am I here? Like, listen to my 10-year-old vocabulary. Like, it's incredible. Why am I, all that, right? And they're just bored. And so when you look at mastery learning and shifting that, you're now allowing kids that already understand it to continue moving on and learning, while the kids who are struggling have the ability to take the time they actually need to better understand it so they don't get lost.
Yeah, so it's great. And here's the thing I want to call out to the audience, this audience, right? You watching and listening. Every time you talk to the marketplace, to your team, your leaders, to your whole employee base, to your partners, to a trade show, a conference, investors, customer, like all of it, in every case you're teaching something. So you have to hook people, and you have to find the surprising, interesting, engaging things that grab people's attention in this increasingly crowded world. You've got Twitter X, you've got TikTok, off and on again as we speak. And you've got dramatic events happening in the world, and people who can't stand 2 seconds of boredom. They have to fill it flicking through something or other. Like, the short attention span just ups the ante on that. And in the middle of all that is noise and garbage. And then you've got what you care about, what you've worked really hard about. And so somehow you have to figure out how to grab attention. And then you have to get people to start to think, to engage with it, right? So now I have your attention. Now I'm going to pass it back over to you. And then you go into like actually having them connect their thoughts and ideas about a thing that you've engaged them with to what it means for them to buy, work with, partner with, sell, contribute, invest. Like, all that last bit is like, what does it mean for me, whatever this opportunity is that's your business, right? I'm interested in it. I've grappled with it a little bit. And now I'm like, oh, this fits for me here. And I connect the dots, and now I'm in, right? Like, now I've done, and that's actually a teaching experience, right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And I think I love how you said that, Bill, because I think a bunch of things on there. Like, one is it's absolutely teaching. And I think sometimes we forget that you're not just but teaching them about what it is you're trying to sell them. That's, to your point, it's kind of a little bit later, right? You might just need to be teaching them how to laugh at this thing, or how to look at that thing, or how to smile about this thing, or how to engage with you, or how to engage with friends. Like, there's a lot of we get taught humor by comedians. We get taught music by musicians. We get taught, right? There's all these different things, right? And I think another point to add on to your point there that I thought you put together really well is, like, you talk about, like, there's all this engagement and getting them hooked and connected, and then eventually helping them understand what's in it for me, right? And then how do I work with you? How do I get into your coaching program? Why should I? All that stuff? The patience that is needed between here and here is insane, because that doesn't all happen usually in one day or a couple posts. That's a lot, right? It's the machine you have to build of, like, you have to be constantly hooking that initial step, right? And getting that first engagement. You also have to constantly be and having the pieces here of they starting to educate on how to ask the questions and engage. And you also have to have it all set up to where they can also explore, well, wait, what is it that you actually do, Bill? You got me with this post, or you got me with this thing, and I'm hooked, and I understand that you're funny, or you're intelligent, or whatever it is that attracted me to your brand. But also now I'm engaged with, oh, you also do this stuff. Great. What does that mean? What does that look like? What does that cost? And how would that be beneficial to me? And then also, if you still got me, how do I buy? And what does that look like? And what if I'm not happy? And that's all the stuff that has to be going all at the same time. And it could take someone a day to get through that, and it could take someone else a year. And I think that's, like, the consistency and the patience to understand of all this stuff that you need to be thinking through and constantly teaching. I love that you connected to teaching. That's really cool. Is, I think, probably one of the hardest parts about entrepreneurship is this idea and this non-realization. I don't know if that's the right word I'm looking for, of this is going to take so much longer than you think, and probably way longer than you want it to, because you first have to build all this stuff. Then you have to have systems and routines in place to keep it going all the time and consistently, which usually involves some sort of scaling of probably your team, or at least contractors or something. And then also you have to keep it fresh the whole time. And also you have to be patient the whole time, because you're not making enough money, and so on and so forth. So much like a music career. Honestly, same thing, right? So, that's awesome. I love how you put that all together.
So why did you get into tell me about when you decided to get into this business. How did you go? What led you to starting Teach Better?
Sure. So after the record label, eventually I shut that down. It was just sort of the end of record labels, kind of, and I made the decision. I had told myself as an artist that I forever got to the point where I thought about doing something shady. That was it. I was to the point where I'm like, I'm not making money unless I steal, so I'm done. We're done. And I did some little things here and there. I've worked in the ran restaurants and open restaurants and done some miscellaneous things in there, but eventually, sort of born out of the record label and having to learn how to code and create websites for my artist, I got asked by a city randomly to create a website and ended up starting a business doing online marketing. So I started doing website design and SEO and content marketing, social media and such for small businesses. And as I was building that, this is when Chad, who I knew from a band, he was a drummer in a band, and then we got to know each other more around outside of the band, around coaching soccer together and stuff. And then he went on and became a teacher. And I'm trying to grow this online thing, and I had occasionally thrown him an idea. He had his decent design eye. I remember I asked him about an ebook I was putting out. This was like ebooks were like the only thing you did. And he reaches out a couple years later and says, "Hey, I want to talk to you about doing an ebook." And I'm like, "Okay." So I remember driving around my neighborhood. It was dark, it was rainy, and just I drove around the block for like an hour and a half, and he was telling me all about these changes he had made in his classroom and the way he had shifted to mastery learning and what it was doing for his students and for him and for not just him as a teacher, but also as a husband and a father, and just the stress that was gone and the success. And he's like, I'm like, teachers are starting to catch on. They're asking me questions. They're trying it. It's, whatever. He goes, I'm getting stopped in the hall a lot. Like, I'm thinking if I could put it up in an ebook online, my colleagues can go read all like the foundation, and then I can just answer follow-up questions. And I told him, this is the inspirational words I had for him, Bill, that we still talk about him in the team now, is I said, dude, we're not just doing an ebook. I don't know what it was. I know you'll know this, and probably everyone listening notice. I just had like that tingling where I'm like, ooh, you got something, dude. I don't know what the hell you're saying to me right now, but you have something. And I just got excited as an entrepreneur. I think you have something here. The fact that teachers, yeah, I just felt it. And I joke with him like about that he was Michelle Pfeiffer in Dangerous Minds, which he yelled at before because I guess teachers don't like that because it's not realistic, but that's not the point. So we ended up meeting. We met at a Buffalo Wild Wings over what I sometimes describe as a plate, but it's probably more of a bucket of wings. And we just kind of started talking. I'm like, I think we should create an online course. I think we can put out content, and I think we can sell this to districts to do it on a bigger level. And and for whatever reason, he said yes. And so that's kind of how it started. It was I had already had the conversation with my wife where I'm like, hey, if this thing that I was doing, my ENI Multimedia, my website, I'm like, this doesn't work out, I'm done. I'm going to go corporate. I'm not going to put us through this again. Mm-hmm. And then I came home and I'm like, hey, listen, change of plan. I'm going to start a whole nother business over here in education of all things. And and so from there on, we just kind of started building from there. And here we are 10 years later, still going. So.
I coached a company in the education space past 100 million a few years ago. Yeah. It's totally possible. And like pure education, like public school education primarily. Right. So you can scale something when it's working.
Absolutely.
And it brings unique character, right? Working with school districts and governments is a different kind of a customer. But look, people sell to defense, they sell to Department of Energy, you can work with selling to these kinds of entities. It's just a different kind of a customer with a different buying cycle.
Mm-hmm. The buying cycle is a big one because it's a lot of times it's state funded that's typically from a federal funding source and or grants or a combination. Typically things are earmarked very strictly to certain things. And so you have to play in that world. And actually fun story about the way the funds were handled. When we got our first big client, that led to Chad having to leave the classroom because he needed to be full-time. Like it was going to be enough for us to pull him full-time, but also he had to be, or else we weren't going to be able to service them. The money got tied up at the state. So Chad put in his notice with the school. It went great. They were amazing with it, whatever. So he got his last paycheck, and then our money got held up for 45 days. And so Chad didn't have a paycheck coming in. And that was when we first learned that, hey, sometimes the money gets held up at the state level. So don't plan on that. But yeah, it's been but we've also had some really great opportunities because of federally funded grants and programs and things of that nature, or just the source and looking for it, so it is a different world, but you can absolutely scale up. And if you're doing good work, you can feel good about that scaling too. So
it's really interesting on all that. And I love that there's driving around in the rain. There's a bucket of wings, and there's a guy named Chad in the story.
Yeah, that's a good premise, I think. Somewhere there.
We've got a lot of who's the guy? Chad, the Chad character, the Chad.
Oh yeah. Oh gosh, who is that?
Tom,
I can't. I know who you're talking about, but I cannot. I can picture it.
Tom Green,
Is oh that yeah? Is it? Is that who that is? Is it Tom Green?
chat with Drew Barrymore.
Yes. Yes. Oh man, that's funny.
Think about
I'm
the
gonna be texting him after this.
I also think about the Surfer Chad character in the YouTube videos talking to the town councils about
Oh
like
gosh, yeah. Oh my god. Oh man, boy. Jeez, Bill. Now I got a bunch of stuff I have to text Chad and laugh at him for.
a good reference.
That's great. Oh, I love it. That's great.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So like back to the serious things, right?
Sure.
So yeah, I'm lost there. I took myself down a road.
Hopefully someone's laughing with us, Bill, and that makes it
Pretty
okay.
sure none of our entrepreneurs have ever done that, right?
Yeah, no, yeah. None of us, we don't, our minds are always super focused and never go anywhere.
So talk about what's been the biggest challenge in growing that business so far? Where have you been right to the edge and nearly lost it?
That's a good question. I think our biggest challenge, boy, that's a really good one. I think, honestly,
Darkest moment,
well, darkest moments. I mean, we've had some rough ones, but we got hit with the check fraud scheme. I won't go into the whole thing, but it turned into a legal battle with the bank, and that was really rough. So that's tough. That kind of rocks things. But honestly, recently, actually, I'll look at just like the last 12-ish months. With COVID and the relief that came from COVID, from the CARES Act and ESSER funding and things of that nature, our industry got a nice surplus of money. And that all kind of dried up this past year in 24. And we knew that was happening. We were planning for it. We were making adjustments for it. It's hit a little harder than expected. So we've had to adjust some more. Luckily, we were thinking about it. But one of the really interesting things has been, I don't know if I wouldn't even call it dark, because we're excited about it because it's changing the way schools look at things, because their budgets are all different now. They're getting adjusted very differently. Some states looked at schools and went, well, you got a lot of money over the last 3 years, so we're cutting you almost to we're ripping money away from you. So we've had to get a little more experimental. We're going after grants more. We're helping them go get money that they didn't know they could get, which is actually more exciting than it is dark. I think for us, maybe one of the things was, we've done some, and it's interesting being on, sorry, I didn't mean to hit my mic there, but scaling up, we scaled a little too quick, too fast when we had a lot of success. And we scaled out of this fear of not being able to take advantage of the success. And I think that led to some, I'll say dark moments, because we had to make some decisions.
You had too many people or the wrong people?
Yeah, we grew our expenses and our team faster than our margins, right? And we did that out of this worry that we weren't going to be able to take advantage of the momentum we had. And that's fine. You got to look at that and go, okay, that's fine. But if we wouldn't have done that, we wouldn't have learned the lessons we had from it. And we're so much more efficient now and focused on things now. But we had to let people go. We had to make decisions. That's something that when you're in a spot where you're like, okay, this is something we can scale, and we're going to need to scale. And that scaling does involve other people. You got to understand that means there's a good chance you're probably going to have to let people go. You're going to have tough conversations. You're going to have to do these things. I think that's been I don't even want to say dark moment either, but just a challenging thing for us. As me as an individual, I'm a nice guy. I don't like making people feel bad. But I also have to make sure that we're staying true to the mission, that we can't service our clients the right way. We can't have that impact if we're not doing things the most efficiently as possible. So that's been, I think, one of my biggest challenges. I think understanding this industry that is super slow moving has been really tough. I talked about the money getting held up, having to realize very early, it was very early on that we almost went out of business right away because of cash flow gaps, because we don't get paid on that for most things. Some small parts of our business we do, but the biggest bulk, it's not reoccurring revenue. It's big checks a couple times throughout the year that line up, but there's always a chance that something gets caught up, something doesn't do it, and you have an option of either going on getting some sort of advance and then you're paying interest and do that, or just putting yourself in a position. We were fortunate that we've been able to get through it, and we've been in a good spot. We have a lot of cash reserves so that we can, but that's tough. And that's something that you just don't think about. You're like, here's this thing people are excited about. It's catching on. People want to pay us money to do it. That's insane. This is great. Let's go. Big checks, big contracts, lots of zeros. This is awesome. But it's oh, but wait a minute. No one can cut that check till July. what the heck do we do between February and July? And I think that was early on. And I think that was a big challenge as well. So a lot of these just come with the idea of like understanding that it's not just enough to have a great idea or a great product or a great service or a great marketing, but you've got to think through all the other things too, especially as that thing starts to grow, because there's a lot of stuff that comes along with it, which I'm sure you have so many conversations with your coaching clients of like, hey, but did you think about? And they're like, oh crap, no. Like, okay, like, it's tough, and that becomes sort of learning moments. I think I have trouble with the dark moment because I look back at everything and I'm like, it was just a road sign I didn't see at the time. But now that I can look back and see it, I'm going to pull that lesson, and we're not going to do that going forward.
The dark is when you get scared and you realize, we could be out of business and all the whatever that represents. And I love that you brought up a cash issue, because it's very easy to think just about doing a good product and having a good team and things like that. And then, but like, if you don't manage your cash, if you don't get paid, and if you don't hang on to the cash that you've got, like, it's game over. Like you can't miss payroll twice in a row. You miss one, you might get away with it a little bit.
That actually leads me to, if I can interrupt you like that, but you're right on, because so something early on that we did is, and I'll see how you respond to this, is for the first, what would have been first 5 years, Chad and I did not take our profits as owners. We paid ourselves, and then the profits stay in the bank account, they stay with the business. And had we not done that, we would not have survived COVID, because when COVID hit and they shut down all the schools, 96% of our revenue came from being in person at a school. And so we saw a lot of friends and colleagues and people we knew go out of business really quick, and or spend the next 3 months after that March 15th or whatever, go and just hound everyone for money. And we made the decision. We said, nope, turning off all sales. We're not sending out anything to any client except for, do you need any support? Because this is insane, because teachers had to go on Friday. They were told on Monday, we're going all virtual. And we started streaming 5 days a week to support them and do that. We ended up picking up more business during that time than we ever imagined, because we were able to sit back and go, hey, we have enough cash in the bank right now. We're going to be okay, unless the world ends, of course. But we can manage this for a while. We don't have to go be the person that knocks on the door for the check when they're trying to figure out how to put the fire out. Instead, we're going to call and say, hey, can we help put the fire out? And what that did was, once they got settled, they're like, hey, we need help with virtual. We're like, we'll help you with virtual. And we're set to go. And then a whole nother thing came out, because now we can do virtual. And I think having that cash, and us not going, hey, we made some money, let's reward ourselves and go buy a boat. We were like, nope, we're going to stay at the same salary out, which is what our families need. And that's it. We need to keep putting this back in, because we know that there might be cash gaps, because I know cash is king is like a whatever, but it's like, that's true, man. Like, especially when you start having payroll, you can't miss that.
Cash and time give you room to think, give you room to find and seize opportunities, give you a chance to breathe, give you a sense of calm, right? Super valuable, both money and time. Like, if you can have a reservoir of them, if you can earmark some time in your schedule, so you're not running from one thing to the next, if you can leave a little cash in your bank, then you can breathe easier, right? Like you don't panic, and then you can look out at opportunities in the world and you can see them. And I think we saw with COVID, COVID's like an old topic now, but it's useful to look back on it. I saw 3 big categories of response to COVID, right? If I take them really at a very high level, one of them is, it doesn't exist, we're just going to keep on acting like normal. And that had issues with then losing some customers who were terrified, and some people and some things like that. And then you had other people who were like, we can't do anything, this is and we just shut down. Or they put in such draconian kinds of limits on their business that they couldn't practically do things. So pretend like nothing, pretend like everything, and the sky is falling. And then the pragmatic, creative, innovative middle, who are like, okay, let's think about our business. How could we do it? Let's go virtual, or let's do a combination, or let's move it outdoors, or let's whatever. And those are the people that did the best, right? And I saw people alienate or suffer or go through all sorts of weird things on the 2 extremes, and then the pragmatic middle thrived. And of course, there's this up and down and blowback in sort of the post-COVID after kind of the money dried up and it started to get harder. And the last couple of years were pretty challenging for folks after the initial recovery. But again, it's just you've got to adapt, you've got to evolve, you've got to pivot, and that I think is a fundamental thing, no matter what it is. I had production throughout Asia some years ago, and for a while there were these massive floods in and around Bangkok, Thailand. We had a significant factory there, and the factory was fantastic. They sent us videos, and they had put up all these blocks and these walking paths to get to, and they'd move their equipment up to the second floor and things like that. And I'm like, yes. And if you go to world famous Venice tourist destination, right, they do the same thing. They get the high water, and then they have these things, and they either trudge around and use boots, or they get wet, or they stand on planks. So they figure out, like, all right, the water's up. Like, how are we going to deal? So things happen, right? Now what? Like, you could put your head in the sand, you could complain about it, you could scream about this party or that political party or whatever, or you could just actually deal with it and find some creative way.
Yeah, and the truth is, what you come up with might not work, but like, I'd much rather try to adjust and pivot than to panic one way or the other, right? And that's hard to do, though. It's hard, especially when your livelihood's at stake, or if other people's livelihood is also relying on whatever your idea is. But I think that's a key trait of any entrepreneur, regardless, big, small, whatever. Like, you've got to be able to sit back, assess the situation. You can take your time to complain if you want, because it sucked, whatever. Yeah. But when it comes down to it, like, from a business standpoint, you got to go, okay, like, what can we do? Like, what idea can we try? And I think a lot of businesses, ours included, out of that terrible situation that the entire world was in, like, came out with some things that were actually, if I can say silver lining, I don't even like to say like positives because of the situation, but like, that they actually like are now changed for the better. We now offer a whole nother tier of support and training to schools that used to not be able to even hire us because they didn't have the money, but now they can, because we can do it virtually. We have the ability to, it's not weird if weather impacts us and we can't get one of our trainers out to do a support visit or something. We can do it from Zoom if we need to. We've got literally pieces of our company, including the a whole nother vertical of supporting educational entrepreneurs, and a mastermind that we run for school administrators and school leaders, that all were born out of the need for connection during the pandemic. And so we could have just been pissed off about the situation, but instead I think we did a pretty good job of adapting and going, okay, well, what does our community, what do our clients and or potential clients need, and then what can we do with our limitations and non-limitations and skills we need to learn? How do we figure out how to do this? And there we go. I mean, we went 4 years where we were doing 12-hour live events, where we went live for 12 hours. And we streamed, at one point we were streaming 6 days a week, live every single morning, just so that they knew we were there. And just things like that, of just how do we adapt to it? And I think that is such a crucial piece, and that never stops. That's from day one of entrepreneurship to your exit day, whatever that day is.
Well, we're on the subject of the COVID pandemic in particular, as a particular kind of a stress. And I think it's useful to know, like, it's just, there are many different ones. Some are very local, some are global, some are regional, but and some are personal. Like, we all go through difficult, challenging times, and really difficult. Like, my mom was hospitalized for great periods of time, unconscious. She never was able to move back home. We had to sell her home, and she now lives in assisted living, and now she's older. But a much younger friend of mine got COVID and died in 6 days. That's a beautiful human voice silenced, right? Like, and those are just a couple of the people that I know. I know a young woman who was in a coma, and so there's all kinds of impacts like that, right? Those are real and terrible. But then there's also, like, how sweet it was to get quiet and still over the place, and to learn to bake, or to whatever the heck you did, or to learn to up your virtual visual game, to get flexible, to move things online, like, any number of things, right? So life and growing our business is inevitably challenging, right? Like, there's profound, difficult things, and yet there can also, like in the middle of that, right? Like when a tree is burning down and a whole city is burning down, somewhere else, something's sprouting and growing and the birds are out. And like, there's this terror and beauty in any given moment. And as a human being, as an entrepreneur, our job is to dance with all of it, to allow the sadness, the suffering, the loss, the fear to pass through us, to not hang on to it. It's inevitable that there will be some pain, but the suffering, that's your choice, right? About how you hold it, right?
Yeah. If I can tie it back to music again, I think about Louis Armstrong used to say, it's only a wrong note depending on the next note. It's the next note that makes it a wrong note or right note, right? And so, right, like something might have forced that wrong note, but it's how we react to it, how we pivot or don't pivot that actually makes it, whether it was an actual wrong note or not. And I'm saying that with the asterisk that obviously there's some things that are completely out of control and we don't get to choose, and catastrophe and stuff like that. But most of the stuff in our business is exactly what you're saying. Like we can choose to wallow in it and be upset about it. That's fine. Take the time to do that. You can do that. But like, you gotta, when it comes to your business, you have to figure out, how do you adapt next? What's the next note that I take from here? And is that the right one or not? And I think a lot of us get paralyzed and don't, out of fear, or worry that we're going to make the wrong one. But like, you can make another wrong one. The third one might be the thing that makes it right, and you just keep going that way. So what's easier said than done.
I'm glad somehow, like you mentioned that, and I'm reminded years ago I gave a workshop in Asia, and I was told to expect about 30 people, and they knew that I was an English speaker, but I'm in a foreign country. But I figure, well, everybody speaks English in this particular crowd, or enough, because I'm planning to give my talk in English, and I showed up, and there's like 150 people, not 30 people. And they're like, and like, most of these people don't speak English, but it's okay. We have a translator for you. So I got to give a workshop via a translator in a different language. And the biggest impact on that is like time, right? It takes time to say something, have it be translated, have them say to you, and all the interaction, and then all the lost cultural stuff, right? And then with 150 person, the mics wouldn't work or died or something like that. So I'm like, all right. So look, I'm like, here we are. Here I am. I'm from halfway around the world. I'm just going to share what I got with you and appreciate you and love you, and so I didn't say I'm going to appreciate you, love you. I'm like, here, I'm going to share with you. Right. Sure. But in my mind, I'm like, what there is to do is to appreciate these people in this moment, in this thing like this. Right. I give this thing with the translator that we adjust as best we can on the fly with the timing. It was a highly, highly successful workshop. And in all results and measures of what was expected, it was really, really successful. And it really like deeply empowered me to just lean into the circumstance, the crisis of the moment, and not get upset and be like, throw a tantrum because the PA doesn't work. Right. Like, but like, all right, here we are. Well, I guess I'm going to talk loud today.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But you expect that from an American, right? Like, so.
But yeah, but what else, what is getting upset about the PA not working going to do for you, or for those people?
Not at all. Yeah. Well, that's where we should probably leave it. Tom's company, teachbetter.com, has lessons not just if you're in education, but for like in business in general. There's like a transference, right? If everything's a remix, teachbetter.com. And he's got a boatload of different podcasts there. Teach Better Talk, which you'll find, and he's doing some stuff for small business as well. But as a really interesting conversation. Thanks for being in the moment with me and going back.
I appreciate it, Bill. This is the type of stuff I like, man. I hope they get something out of it. I really do.
Yes. Well, listen, that's our show. That's our conversation. If you want to know more about our stuff, not just stuff, but our stuff, scalingcoach.com. That's our website. And that's where we got a workshop every month to dive into scaling up and figure out how to apply it, how to use the latest tools with the age-old tools of scaling, and now accelerate them with AI. So you'll find all that and more at scalingcoach.com. So go there and check us out, find all the best, or just like, subscribe, turn on your notifications wherever you are right now. we're like everywhere, LinkedIn, YouTube, etc. So find us there. And thanks everyone for watching, for listening. Thanks again to my team at Storyon, who get our show prepared, produced every week, to my friend and mentor, Vern Harnish, who created the whole scaling up framework in the first place, and to all of you for watching, for listening. Keep scaling. We'll talk to you next time.